We need that or not, but welcome. I'm Calvin Cobb, and on behalf of all of our board, I want to thank you all for coming out this evening. This is the third town hall meeting of the Cypress Creek Drainage Improvement District, and again, we appreciate all of you coming tonight for our presentation. I want to begin by introducing some of our elected officials who have come to join us. Commissioner Precinct 3 Tom Ramsey back here. From Commissioner Brione's office, we've got Sylvan Rodriguez. Melissa Rao from the North Harris County Regional Water Authority. Christina Lindsay from Houston Stronger. I know Commissioner has some folks of his staff who you might want to introduce them, and if you would, or say a few words.
Eric Kevin. Anything we need to know about Cypress Creek, we'll ask Eric. Roger Bridgewater, he's head of our community outreach. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the board and what you're doing. Y'all are facilitating solutions. Y'all aren't just sitting around talking about a problem. You're trying to figure out how to solve it. And that's a good thing. Because we know if we can get MUDs working together, we can make some good things happen. The primary source of governance in Harris County Precinct 3 is MUDs. Got over 210 MUDs in Precinct 3. Kind of proud of that, actually. For over 49% of the unincorporated area is in Precinct 3. By the way, that's going to be the growth area in the next 10 years. You know, we've lost population in the city of Houston, right? We're gaining population in the unincorporated area. We all know why, right? It has to do with good schools, safe neighborhoods, and areas, and now we're dealing with the flooding side. So again, I want to again acknowledge the board. Thank you, Mr. President, for what you're doing. Thank y'all for being a catalyst for our ideas on what we can do. I've talked to a lot of people for many years on what we can do in Cypress, and there's just a whole lot of opinions on what we can do and where we can do it. And right now, let's have those conversations. But I want to destroy one myth tonight. Some people say there's not any projects planned or being done in Cypress. Well, let me just tell you, that's not true. And Eric can give you the list after the meeting, if you can catch it. 150 million dollars are currently planned and funded to be done in the next 3 years. I call that a really good start. That's not the end. That's the start. But when you hear people say things like, we haven't done any work in Cypress, no work is being done in Cypress, no work is planned in Cypress, that's just not true. So with your good input and your good support and your good direction, we can even do more. Thank you all for coming tonight as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to add to the Commissioner's remarks. He was instrumental in forming the Cypress Creek Drainage Improvement District. Without his support, without his guidance and leadership, we wouldn't be where we are today. So we really appreciate it, and please help me in welcome and thank him again. Now I want to start off with the agenda. We've already done some of the introductions. We'll do some more of that. And you've got an extended list of the agenda in your hand here. We'll look at previous studies that have been done, the Dunbar Obedient Report. We'll take a look at the Harris County Flood Control District project status, and as Commissioner Ramsey mentioned, there's a lot of things that are going on there. We'll take a look at how this Drainage Improvement District was created. We'll look at the timeline and goals that we have, and then we'll have questions. And you may notice, and we'll come back to this, on the agenda there's a QR code down at the lower right-hand side. And so you can, for those of you who have cameras, you can scan that and a form will come up where you can input your questions and they will instantly come up here to our iPad. So that's kind of where we are. I want to show you on the back of the agenda, there's a list of supporters. And we're up to now, I think, over 80 organizations and people in our community that support the Drainage Improvement District. And the purpose of putting this list together is as we talk to people and we show them and we say, these are the important organizations and leaders in our community that support this, to show that this has broad range of support. And I won't read the list, you can see it, but there are many prominent folks and organizations on that list. And we encourage you to add your name to that list if you would like to. So there are these small cards where you can pose questions on one side if you'd like to, and on the other side you can add your name to the supporter list. So if you'd like to do that, we would love to add you to that list. I want to start off with introductions of our board members. Mark Adam is our Vice President. Clara Lewis, our Secretary Treasurer. Joe Myers down here. Barbara Schlottman. And then our legal counsel is Andy Johnson down here. And then our speaker, Larry Dunbar. Larry's going to talk about all the previous studies that have been done on the Cypress Creek watershed. So now I'd like to give you a definition of the Cypress Creek watershed. The Cypress Creek watershed is shown on this map in green, and it includes Cypress Creek and Little Cypress Creek. It's the largest of the watersheds in Harris County. It has nearly 500,000 citizens, and that number is important. There's a lot of us that live in the Cypress Creek watershed. And the boundaries are shown there. On the west, this is the east portion of Waller County. It excludes the cities of Waller and Prairie View. On the north, it goes along FM 2920 and State Highway 99, the Grand Parkway. On the south, it's just north of Highway 529 and runs along 1960. And on the east side, it's the confluence of Spring and Cypress Creek, which is a little bit east and a little bit north of the Intercontinental Airport. So that is the Cypress Creek watershed, and that's what, when our group was set up, that's the area that we have responsibility for. Now, the idea in these town hall meetings was for us to kick off the activity of the Drainage Improvement District. And so what we want to do is we want to engage all of you in a continuing conversation that will lead us to develop a comprehensive flood mitigation plan through public workshops. So this is, as I say, the third of the town hall meetings we had. We had one on the east side, we had one in the middle, this is the one on the west. So we're trying to cover all of the Cypress Creek watershed. And these will then kick off into a series of workshops so people can come and can express their ideas. And like Commissioner Ramsey said, there's lots of ideas about what we can do and what we ought to do. So we'll try to compose those into input into the plans that we have going forward. Now, I mentioned questions, and this is this QR code. You can scan it off of the agenda page. You can scan it off of here, and we'll come back to another slide that looks like this if you want to add questions. So again, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank our elected officials and their representatives for being here this evening. And so with that, I want to turn over to Joe Myers, who will introduce Larry Dunbar.
Good evening, everyone. This is so far, this is, I think, probably one of our best or the best turnout. So I appreciate everybody showing up. My name is Joe Myers. I'm actually a resident of Coles Crossing, president of the board out here in 365. I have a fairly long career in drainage. I spent 26 years with the Harris County Flood Control District. Spent 7 years with the city of Houston. Retired recently. Retired in January 22. Like some people, I've remained retired. Some people decided to go back to work. But I took on, unbeknownst to me, I joined the Cypress Creek Flood Control Coalition in April or May of 22, thinking it's an organization I knew about when I was with the Harris County Flood Control District. Someone in this room actually recommended I contact them. I don't like that person much anymore, because not long after I joined them in June, I became their president. Not long after June, of course, I got wind of a new effort in the Cypress Creek watershed. So we really do appreciate Harris County Flood Control District, and all the work that they've done. But at the end of the day, there's a whole lot more work that needs to be done. 120 some odd homes flooded in Coles Crossing during Harvey. There hasn't been a lot of work done since that time, but there are some projects being worked on, and we can hear about those projects from Eric Heppen. We won't let him leave, by the way. He won't be allowed to leave until we've exhausted all of our questions to him, but he is a great asset to use. So when I got wind of this new effort, this new group that wanted to create a special purpose district to cover Cypress Creek to address this void between what has currently been planned, which is a lot. You heard the commissioner talk about 150 million. There's 300 and something. There's like 200 and some odd million in the bond for Cypress Creek. There's another 100 and something million dollars for Little Cypress Creek. So it's a lot of money. Sounds like a lot of money. But the issues that surround Cypress Creek are a whole lot bigger than that. And so there needed to be an effort concerted on that, focused on that. And so get involved in this group. We're working toward legislation, but we need to figure out, what are we going to do? What's going to be our role? What do we need to focus on? And so we decided that we needed to come up with a comprehensive plan. You saw that on a previous slide. There's been all these studies. The Harris County Flood Control District has spent the last 30 years looking at Cypress Creek. They haven't ignored it. They've just been looking at it. And there is some money in the current bond program and currently with the Commissioner's Office to do work on Cypress Creek. But we really wanted to come up with a comprehensive plan that looked at all the parts, because the current plans just have bits and pieces, as you'll hear from Larry Dunbar. We wanted to create this comprehensive plan. Larry Dunbar has been doing work for the coalition, Cypress Creek Flood Control Coalition, for years. And he's also working for the Coastal Prairie Conservancy out in the Katy Prairie. Him and Dr. Phil Bedient with Rice University Speed Center are very familiar with Cypress Creek. So we asked Larry and Dr. Bedient to look at all these studies that have been done already. Just try to get a handle on, do a high-level review of this documentation, and see if there's some place we can start. Is there something we can focus on? If we ever got our hands on some money that could go and analyze something, what should that be? Should it be detention? Should it be channel improvement? Should it be a tunnel? What should it be? So we don't know. So we had contacted Larry Dunbar and Dr. Bedient to begin that journey and look at those studies. And there are a lot of studies, as you will see in the presentation. So with that, Larry Dunbar is with us tonight. Larry is a professional engineer and expert in flooding and drainage matters, and frequently serving as an expert witness in legal proceedings. He is also an attorney specializing in water and drainage law. He received his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Notre Dame, his master's degree in environmental engineering from Illinois Institute of Technology, and began his career with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. He entered the private sector with engineering consulting firms and moved to Texas and to Houston, where he finished his law degree at the University of Houston. So Dr. Dunbar has been, Mr. Dunbar, has been practicing as a flood drainage engineer for almost 50 years and as a water drainage environmental lawyer for almost 35 years. He serves as a consultant in various public and private entities such as the Fort Wayne County Drainage District. And since 2014, he's been serving as a project manager at the Speed Center with Dr. Bedian. They're a research center involving numerous universities that study riverine and coastal flooding issues. He has been a consultant to the Cypress Creek Flood Control Coalition and other interests in Cypress Creek since the early 2000s. So with that, I welcome Mr. Larry Dunbar.
As Larry is working his way up, I want to introduce another good friend, Regina Racinos from the General Land Office. She has been very helpful in supporting our Drainage Improvement District. And so, Regina, thank you for being here.
Well, Joe, thanks for the kind words. My name is Larry Dunbar, and what I want to do tonight is kind of go over quickly some basic hydrology concepts, give all of you hopefully a better understanding of how Cypress Creek watershed works and the complexities it has and the difficulties we face in trying to deal with those complexities. Cypress Creek is, as you heard, is probably the biggest watershed in the county. It's also the most complex watershed in the county, and we'll get into that. And then I'll go through these various studies that Joe talked about, that Dr. B and I have reviewed, and kind of figure out, talk about where we go from there. The Cypress Creek Flood Control Coalition, as Joe indicated, had asked Dr. B and I, first of all, kind of to take a look at the studies that have been done on Cypress Creek to see if there was a need to develop a comprehensive flood mitigation plan, because there had been a lot of studies. There have been flood mitigation plans developed in the Cypress Creek watershed. So the first step was, do we need to reinvent the wheel? Is those studies already done? Is the plan already developed? Is it being implemented? What more do we need to do? So our first step was to kind of take a look at those recent studies and those recent plans, see if they make sense, especially given what's been done in the past. And if so, great. Let the coalition know that. If not, then let the coalition know, hey, here's some issues we have, and here's what we want to do in terms of going forward. In terms of going forward, it would be to say, okay, here's some potential projects, concepts that need to be evaluated, identified what their benefits are, what their costs may be, and at the end of the day, then come up with hopefully a truly comprehensive flood reduction program and plan for the Cypress Creek watershed. And when we talk about the Cypress Creek watershed, we're really probably talking about main Cypress Creek and little Cypress Creek. And then hopefully get community support for that plan, because we're going to be wanting to get community input into how to develop that plan along the way. So it's no big surprise at the end when we present this plan that the community doesn't know anything about it. The community will know about it because they will have been part of developing it. So right now we're kind of finishing up phase one, and we'll go over that. Quickly, the little hydrology 101. The things that really affect kind of flooding in a watershed, like Cypress Creek or any of the watersheds, obviously it's rainfall, obviously it's the topography of the ground. Is it steep? Is it flat? How big is the watershed? Is it small? Is it large? Those things all come into play. The type of soils. Up here in Cypress Creek, you have more sandy soils than you do in the rest of Harris County. Most of Harris County is more clay soils. Up here, it's more sandy soils. Sandy soils means it's going to absorb a lot more rainfall and produce, therefore, less runoff. That's a good thing for you. On the other hand, when that property gets developed and concreted over, lawns put in, etc., that means that's going to generate more water and reduce the amount of water that gets infiltrated in the ground. And that kind of contributes to more flooding downstream if it's not fully mitigated. And additionally, that we call it channel morphology or type. Obviously, if the channels are nice, clean, straight, improved, they're going to carry a lot more water than if they're kind of windy, overgrown with trees, brush, etc. They're not going to move as much water. And of course, then obviously the type of land use or land cover you have. I'll say that probably the biggest drivers is topography, soil type, and the vegetation that goes with it, and of course imperviousness. Up here in Cypress Creek, you can see this is a map. These are maps of Harris County. In the upper kind of left-hand area where you see the white, that's where you're talking about basically the Cypress Creek area. You have some significant slope in Cypress Creek compared to other parts of the county. Most of the other parts of the county are pretty flat. Cypress Creek, you have some slope, meaning ground is sloping and dropping pretty quickly. Rainfall and runoff, therefore, can move quickly, and it moves quickly into Cypress Creek. But then Cypress Creek shoots straight east. Okay, so the topography slopes pretty much south-southeast. But then as it gets into Cypress, upper Cypress comes down and then turns and heads east, where it kind of flattens out. And that's where you see all your flooding. So, that's just a challenge in how to deal with the problem. Soil types, again, I talked about the sandy soil. You can see the sandy soil, kind of that purplish area in the upper left-hand part of the county, which is where Cypress Creek is compared to other parts of the county. Vegetation, there's a lot of parts in Upper Cypress, the undeveloped areas that are kind of more native prairie type vegetation. The studies we've been doing for the Coastal Prairie Conservancy Group showed how much benefit native prairie vegetation has in reducing flooding downstream. Both in the overflows that go into Addicks Reservoir area from Cypress Creek as well as downstream of Cypress Creek. So again, when you develop those areas, not only do you have to, be aware of soil type that you're dealing with, you also be aware of the vegetation that you may be getting rid of, and you need to compensate for that in the detention or retention that you put into the further development. Here's a little thing we did for the Cypress Creek watershed. We broke the watershed up into little pieces. That's what all these polygons are. And the different color types give an indication of how fast water runs off those areas. And so the light blue, I think is what, 0.2 to 0.4 CFS an acre. That may mean nothing to anybody. That's all right. That comes off pretty slow, compared to the more brownish, reddish areas where you're up to over 1 CFS per acre. So you're talking 5-6 times as fast water will come off those areas. So what do you see in the upper left-hand part in Upper Cypress? Water comes off pretty fast. Why? It's steep. It's not necessarily developed, it's steep. In the far right-hand part, where it's already developed, it comes off fast because it's developed. It's streets, sidewalks, driveways, houses, okay, a good drainage system, okay? The blue areas, those are probably undeveloped areas, at least for now. And so as they develop, we want to make sure that, those blue areas, those rates of how flow and runoff comes off the ground don't increase when you develop it. How do you do that? You build a detention pond. And the detention pond has to be big enough to hold the water that comes into it and let it off slowly, kind of at the rate that it currently comes off. In fact, you actually even have to let it go off slower than it naturally goes off, because when you develop, you generate more water. That water has to come off sometime, okay? And studies have found that if we keep doing that, we let more of that water coming off, and we keep it at the same rate, they start adding on top of each other, and we actually cause more flooding. So we actually have to reduce how much water comes off currently to make sure we don't increase flooding. And that's where development criteria becomes important. Here's just an indication of what the old 100-year and 500-year floodplains along Cypress Creek downstream of 290 look like. It just basically is just showing you, it doesn't look like it's a big area. Again, partly because you've got some elevation here in the Cypress Creek watershed, but there's quite a number of homes that get impacted. We picked the 500-year floodplain, which is the old 500-year floodplain, which is probably going to become the new 100-year floodplain when the new maps and studies come out. But you can see we're talking about, at this time about 12,000 parcels of land in the 500-year floodplain between 290 down to the mouth. And you got that value that it's a little over $2 billion worth of properties there. I talked about the Cypress Creek overflow. So in Upper Cypress Creek starts kind of almost up in the Waller County area, Waller County, City of Waller up there. It flows south. Those blue areas, the dark blue area is the, basically the floodway. Then we show the 500-year floodplain as being kind of the lighter blue area. And those blue areas are showing where the water from Cypress Creek, as it comes south and then turns, makes that loop and heads to the east. A lot of that water will spill out of Cypress Creek to the south, flow into Addicks Reservoir watershed, into Bear Creek, South Mady Creek, Langham Creek, get into Addicks Reservoir, and flood all those folks who live in the reservoir. That's basically what happened during Harvey. Okay? Most of the water from Upper Cypress overflows into Addicks during major storms. Give you a general idea, I think we calculated for the old 100-year, we had about 16,000 cubic feet per second of water coming down Upper Cypress. 5,000 continues on into Cypress. The rest overflows into Addicks. So that's a big benefit to Cypress Creek folks who live downstream, that you have that overflow. So early on back in the 40s when Addicks and Barker were being designed, they had proposed to put a levee in that part of Cypress Creek to stop that overflow so it wouldn't come into their newly constructed reservoir. Good idea at the time. Problem would be, of course, you're going to send all that water down Cypress. Bad idea. So what they did is they nixed that concept and basically built a bigger Addicks Reservoir and to accept that overflow. Now after Harvey and all the flooding, they're trying to figure out ways to deal with that. I'm working with the coalition, working with Cypress Creek folks, Cypress Creek, Katy Prairie Conservancy, which is now Coastal Prairie Conservancy, in looking at what the Corps of Engineers proposes there to make sure it doesn't adversely impact other folks while they're trying to solve the problem for Addicks and Barker. But that's the upper part and the complexities there. Here's a list of the prior studies. I think I've listed 15 here. Some of them there's updates, so there's multiple studies here. Starting back, actually the first study was actually done in I think 1984. That number one, that regional detention study was actually an update from the 1984 study. And these are all studies that are generally going to look at different parts of Cypress Creek watershed. Some of them deal with the upper Cypress Creek area and the overflow issue. Some of them will look at Little Cypress only. Some of them will look at Cypress Creek by itself and maybe only Lower Cypress Creek. So I'm not sure there's any, in fact I'm pretty sure there is no study that really looked at everything going on throughout the Cypress Creek watershed in trying to deal with all the issues that exist in Cypress Creek watershed. You have the overflow issue in the upper part. You have flooding, I'll say in the middle and lower part of Cypress Creek. You have flooding in Little Cypress Creek. And you have development moving quickly in Little Cypress and Upper Cypress. So those folks downstream on Cypress Creek and Little Cypress are probably a little nervous about seeing all this development going on, as you should be. because you've seen what's happened in the past, you want to make sure that doesn't continue to happen. And so part of what we're trying to do is come up with a plan and make sure, you know, we can try to address those problems currently and hopefully in the future not add to them. I'm going to go through these real quickly. So this was a 91 study, and again, it was an update to previous study. And basically, in the shaded areas where they were looking at putting in some regional detention ponds to basically eliminate or help reduce the overflow into attics. That plan had a little bit of stuff in Little Cypress, not sure why, because it had nothing to do with the overflow. This study here was what they call the major tributary study. It started in 2003. It got updated by Michael Baker, it's an engineering firm. It looked at the tributaries to Cypress Creek. Not Cypress Creek itself, but the tributaries. And not quite sure why, but they did. They came up with a bunch of projects, basically regional detention ponds at the lower ends of all these tributaries, along with some channel improvements on those tributaries. But they really never looked at what that would do on Cypress Creek itself. The update that Michael Baker did kind of has led to what we'll look about later, which is the current plan for main Cypress Creek, which is about 23 regional ponds basically along the sides of Cypress Creek. So here was then the 2003 major tributary study, all these different tributaries. They had various recommended basins, basically detention ponds, to put on those tributaries. Little Cypress had 8 that were recommended. Mountain Creek, which is the upper part of Upper Cypress, had 5. All the other ones had a base about 1 or 2. It was unclear to me in reading this study what they were really trying to accomplish. The reduction in flows weren't all that great. My sense, even though you don't say it sometimes in these studies, is they were basically planning improvements for all the tributaries. Do some channelization, and when you channelize, you're making the channel bigger to carry more of the flow. It helps get rid of the floodplain along there and bring more flow in. That's good for that area, but now you're going to send more flow downstream, which is bad. So normally then you put a detention pond at the end of those channel improvements to slow down that excess water, to slow it back down. And I think that's what this was all doing. And so here on Little Cypress, out of that study, here is basically about the 8 regional ponds that they were proposing, along with some of the channel improvements. This ultimately got updated as well. There was also a study in 2012 that Waller County kind of did to help some flooding they had up in the city of Waller area. But they also recommended kind of a big detention pond in the Mound Creek area where it just starts to begin Upper Cypress, with the idea that this was going to help catch a lot of that water that would otherwise overflow into attics. That was that objective. Of course, that never got built. In 2018, CPC, the Coastal Prairie Conservancy, previously known as Katy Prairie Conservancy, hired Dr. Beatty and I to take a look at the impact that their lands had on flooding, both in the overflow and downstream. We're just wrapping up that study now in 2023. It involved some field investigations and testing of infiltration rates of various vegetation types, and looked at what that kind of vegetation does in terms of reducing runoff and slowing down the runoff like a detention pond does, and how that benefits reducing overflows into attics, but also reducing peak flows going down Cypress. So that's what that study was done. And their recommendation there was really maybe try to convert more of the open lands now before they develop, convert them into native prairie vegetation, try to conserve them, and preserve some of the existing lands to provide flood benefits. Dr. B and I also were working with the Houston Consortium group back in 2019. They were looking at different flooding issues. One of the issues we asked them to look at was for Cypress Creek. Again, they were focused somewhat on looking at what could be done for the overflows. This was just kind of not too far after Harvey. But realized that there's a lot of floodplains in the middle and lower part of Cypress. And so it was like, you know, yeah, we can try to reduce flooding in attics by reducing or eliminating the overflow. That'd be great, but we're not going to send that water down Cypress. And so what came out of this study was, well, we could put a big detention pond right there upstream of 290 on the north side of Cypress Creek and just dump all that water in there and basically store it and pump it out when it's safe to pump it out downstream. That's what came out of that particular study. In 2021, there was a Little Cypress Creek master drainage plan that was done. It kind of mirrored somewhat that 2003 study in Little Cypress. They came up with about 9 regional detention ponds along with some channel improvements, same kind of concept. And this particular study looked at these different areas along Little Cypress. The study actually started in 2018. It got updated in 2021. 2018 study showed that, okay, if we put all these channel improvements in there, put all these detention ponds in there, we can, if you look at that first yellow line, it says LCC watershed, for Little Cypress Creek watershed, flows that are coming from the Little Cypress Creek watershed going into Cypress Creek, right there upstream of Grant Road. The effective conditions means that's what the FEMA floodplain maps and floodplain study said was coming out of Little Cypress, about 7,600 CFS for the 100-year event. The updated study in 2018 said, wait a second, we've revised that now. It looks like now you have over 12,000 CFS coming down Little Cypress Creek and going into Cypress. Right? Of course, the obvious question would be, how'd that happen? Right? They don't say. Then they go, but when we do all these improvements that we're talking about, these regional detention ponds and the channel improvements, we can bring that 100-year flow, that ultimate condition flow, back down close to what it is in the FEMA maps. Good idea. Okay? And then when that flow goes into Cypress Creek and all the way down Cypress Creek at these various locations, you can see the ultimate conditions flows are about the same as the effective conditions, the FEMA flows, and much lower than the revised existing flows. So that looked like a good plan. Still up the question of how did it go up so high. Here's the 2021 update. And I know the guy who did the 2018 study for LAN. He actually was a PhD student, Dr. Bedian. He didn't do this update. This update got done, not sure why, but all of a sudden now you see those revised existing conditions, and remember the LCC watershed number had been 12,000, okay? This was the FEMA type stuff. Then when the 2021 update came in, they increased the rainfall, okay? The National Weather Service had updated all their rainfall statistics after Harvey. And so now the 100-year rain in our area here, instead of being about 13 inches, it's more like 17 inches. So obviously the flows are going to go up. Okay, and the 17 inches is close to what the old 500-year flows were, and rainfall is about 17 inches also in a day. So it's not unexpected that the flows would go up. The flows seem to kind of go up more than I would expect it them to. But now they're at 17,000 instead of the original 7, or maybe probably was closer to 10 for the 500 year. But now look at the ultimate conditions. They're just going to maintain the revised existing conditions. Well, what's going to happen then when it goes into Cypress? You no longer have the original flows coming into Cypress, you now have these increased flows coming into Cypress. Probably not a good plan if I were living in Cypress. So this was an issue we found, and we said, this may not be a great plan, or at least it hasn't been coordinated with the study that was done on Cypress, which is this study. So this study was done in the 2021 timeframe, in taking that old major tributary study that had all these detention ponds kind of along the bottom of all the tribs, and said, well, we'll take a look at those. We'll add some more sites. We'll come up with 49 different potential sites to put a regional pond in, from about 290 all the way down. And out of that group, they ended up coming up with about 23 that they thought made sense. So they identified 23 regional detention pond sites. They came up with some cost information. They ranked them in terms of giving them a score on how likelihood or what the benefits they could provide versus the cost. I'm not going to go through all that. But as you can see, it costs a lot of money. And when we looked at this study, we realized that the modeling that was done for this study, they looked at all 23 and dumped them in the model and said, here's the result. And I'm sitting there going, well, wait a second. How do you know all 23 are needed? How do you know each of the 23 actually is worthwhile? You know, where was that evaluation, that analysis? It's not in there. So that's one of the things we identified that, hey, someone probably needs to take a look at that, look at this study, look at the modeling, add in what's going on in Little Cypress, because this study did not include that additional flow coming out of Little Cypress, and kind of try to pull it all together. And this is why a comprehensive flood reduction plan for the Cypress Creek watershed is needed, even though there's some master drainage plans that have already been developed and are being implemented by flood control. Good news is they have a plan and they're implementing it and getting monies and buying land to build these ponds. Bad news is that may not be the best plan. And so what we're going to be doing is identifying what they've already done, the land they've already bought, and incorporate that into a good plan that actually fits everything together and actually makes sense. And here are some flows. I'm not sure we want to get too complicated in this, but basically this plan was having down there US 290, which is the upstream end. You can see this Atlas 14 is the new rainfall. You have about 11,780 CFS. The proposed is 11,074, or 743 CFS. That's good. So proposing, you're really kind of, reducing some of the peak flows. You actually increase some of the peak flows. But the amount of reduction in the far right-hand corner says, here's how much reduction in flooding you get from spending maybe close to $1 billion. 1 inch, 2 inches, 4 inches, that just doesn't sound like a lot. Surely we can do better. Give me $1 billion, I'll do better. Then we have the tunnel. Okay, flood control is looking at tunnels, primarily originating from trying to deal with the Attucks-Parker problem, building a tunnel from the reservoirs kind of under Buffalo Bayou over to the east side of town. But in doing that work, they also considered and looked at maybe building tunnels in other parts of the county. There was actually about 8 tunnel alignments that they had looked at. They ranked them, again, how many structures could be, helped. You can see there's a little Cypress Creek tunnel alternative that looked like it had, some benefit there. They ranked them, cost them. Little Cypress Creek came in 5th out of 8. Well, then they decided to take the top 4 and move forward. But good news is, the last I heard from flood control, they are actually willing to reconsider all of them again. So there's a concept there where instead of trying to widen the channel of Cypress Creek, which is probably going to involve some maybe buyout, building a whole bunch of regional detention ponds, again, buying the land to do that. An option is go underneath everything and just send it on its way. Probably at the end, depending upon where you let it out, you may have to build a regional detention pond, maybe slow it down. But there's some concepts here that I think are probably, again, worthwhile considering in developing a plan. So you've got these different concepts, you have these different areas of concern. You know, Upper Cypress Creek, you're looking at maybe detention, some expansion of prairie vegetation. Little Cypress Creek, regional detention, some channelization. Middle Cypress Creek the same, Lower Cypress Creek the same, maybe a tunnel for Lower Cypress Creek. So these are just some of the concepts that came out of all those studies, and we need to kind of develop a list of concepts that we want to take to the next step, and just kind of model them, see how beneficial they really are, how much they're going to cost, and then come up with a plan. All of that being coordinated with the public. I'm not sure that's mine.
That's not you.
That's you?
That's one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. There was a lot of information there. A lot of things on the drawing board.
I can keep talking.
There's going to be hydrology 101.
All right. My name is Mark Adam. I'm a professional engineer. Lived here in Cypress my whole life. I grew up, went to Cypress High School, spent many, many years on Cypress Creek, hunting, fishing, rafting, whatever. It's been a great amenity to this area. But it has problems. We flood. We've had a lot of development along Cypress Creek and very little work done on Cypress Creek. So we're making some progress. So tonight we'll talk a little bit about what's being done, but I'm gonna go off script here, guys, just for a minute. But I have a similar background like Joe. I was on the Cypress Creek Flood Control Coalition for Joe, and I asked him to join the coalition. Promises of great wealth and recognition. So you got a little recognition, but the wealth is still coming. But it's a great organization. It's been around for many, many years. It was founded by Dick Smith and some others, and they felt like something needed to be done. Somebody needed to take action and look at what's going on. We have a lot of the members here tonight, probably former members too, but if y'all would take a minute just to stand up, and I want to recognize you. Jack, John, who else we got here? Jim Robertson, and the person that stokes the fires is Lisa Foley. She's a great asset. So. If you're really not familiar with that group, I would suggest go to their website and see what they've done. Over the years, they've done a lot of tremendous work. They do a lot of questioning and evaluating. They've worked with Larry for many years on looking at things and questioning why things were doing, why they were doing what they were doing. So,
Can you speak up a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Speak up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can hear myself perfect. But anyway, it's strictly a volunteer organization like the Friends here. These guys have dedicated many, many hours, a lot of their own resources to make something happen. So if you get a chance, visit their website and see the work they've done. Done a lot of good things. Anyway, so I'll go back on the script here. So Commissioner Ramsey gave a little bit of my presentation, but we have been spending money on Cypress Creek. And Little Cypress Creek, which y'all may or not, I think Larry alluded to, but there are actually two separate watersheds, but Little Cypress does come into Cypress Creek watershed. So there are projects underway right now, and I would direct you to the Harris County Flood Control website, as well as the precinct websites. There's a lot of information on there, what's going on. Projects in the works and projects that are being planned. So there's several batches right now that are underway or will be underway. So I would direct your attention there. So some of the projects involve floodplain preservation, detention basin, They are buying land for future flood control projects. A lot of maintenance going on. If you've looked, you've seen some of the tributaries, a lot of maintenance work has been going on to clean up those channels, which have not, a lot have been looked at for 30 years or more. So a lot of that type of work going on, and again, more engineering and construction. So, Larry mentioned the 22 basins. That's in the implementation plan. That is on the flood control website also if you want to look at it. And if you just have a whole bunch of time and want to go through and read that report, it's, how many pages is it, Larry?
A lot.
A lot, a lot. But it's a lot of good information in there. So we need money, and we have had a lot of help with our Congressman Dan Crenshaw and our Representative Sam Harless. And we are working, trying to get other monies. And we need monies to fund these projects and make these things happen. So a showcase project that they had a kind of a opening here about a month ago, Eric, or so. This the detention basins over at TC Jester near Cypress Creek in the Cypress Wood area, where we had Dan Crenshaw there and Sam Harless and Commissioner Ramsey, and far right hand side is Dr. Tina Peterson. If y'all have never met her, she's the new executive director of the Harris County Flood Control District. And I had the pleasure this morning to have coffee with Dr. Peterson, and I was very impressed. We think alike on, we need to do a lot of work on Cypress Creek, and she is on board and she is listening. So I'm very glad to have her in our corner trying to get some things done. There's other projects also going on in Cypress Creek. If y'all been to Mercer, if you remember the Mercer area, or Mercer Auditorium, if you've ever been there, beautiful feature, damaged severely by Harvey. The work is underway there. Westador, one of the subdivisions along 1960 there, just west of I-45. And again, the TC Jester basins. Again, those are under construction, and hopefully when they're finished, they will be used, and hopefully we can do something with them to make them viable and useful to the public. So we need funding. We need to get money so we can work on these projects, and that's the charge of our Drainage Improvement District, is to work and try to find funding and make these projects happen. And that's why we need your assistance, your feedback, your thoughts on what you think is important. Because that's the only way this is going to work. We all work together and make something happen. So thank you.
Just as a quick note, while Barbara's taking the podium, Westador Flood Control District did a presentation on the Westador Basin via Zoom a couple weeks ago. TC Jester presentation is tomorrow night. Or tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow night, 6:30 to 7:30. So you go to the website, log in, sign up, and you can participate in that presentation tomorrow evening.
I'm Barbara Schlottman, and I am not an engineer, but I think I turned the volume up. Can you hear me better now? Okay, thank you. We all know that the Harris County Flood Control District is responsible for 23 watersheds, and that includes the city of Houston as well as the unincorporated area. And since we don't have a city out here, we have no one to represent us. And that's why this group has been formed, to give you a voice, and hopefully we'll become a unified voice to give all of us a chance to make a difference. Our watershed has not had sufficient funds to alleviate flooding, and that's one of our chores, to be there as that squeaky wheel to try to get funding for you. So we've been created. Sam Harless carried the bill, and it was passed and signed by the governor on June the 19th, 2023. So we're a fairly new entity. And the result is you now have this board to represent you. Our mission, whoops, let's see, is it that screen? Which button? That button. That button? Where's the button?
You got it. There.
I had the who?
It's there.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I didn't.
Oh, you move back. There.
All right.
Forward.
Right, yeah.
Right.
One more.
Who moved my buttons? Okay. I told you I was not an engineer. Okay. Now, we do have a mission statement, And our mission is to reduce future flooding and increase flood resilience in the Cypress Creek watershed through a comprehensive mitigation and funding plan. And our vision is to serve the public as a governmental entity, to providing a unified voice for the Cypress Creek watershed. Okay, and is it this one? Yes. Nope. There we go. Our challenges. If all of the recommended basins were completed for the Cypress Creek, we would only have a reduction of we'd only protect 19% of the people that flooded. So we know we have a very lofty goal to make a difference. A comprehensive flood mitigation plan you keep hearing about is needed to create a safer environment along our watershed. And of course, we need the necessary funds to carry out additional projects. We believe the best way for us to predict our future is to create it. And that's our goal. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Clara Lewis, and I've lived in the area since 1976 and seen, along with many of you, have seen many changes, and there's many more to come. We all recognize that though some progress is being made, there is much more that needs to be done. The current plans do not do enough to reduce flooding. There's not a comprehensive flood mitigation and funding plan for Cypress Creek, and even if we do complete the remaining recommended 16 basins, it only addresses 19% of the flooding issues for the watershed. The 4 basins that are currently under construction address less than 5% of the watershed's flooding issues. Basins are only one element of an effective overall plan. There's channelization, tunnels, and other solutions mentioned tonight that long-term will need to be a part of a well-defined, effective, comprehensive plan. We've had so many plans, and what good is all this planning if plans are not actually implemented? Our vision is to tackle these challenges more effectively through a unified voice for the Cypress Creek watershed. So what role does Cypress Creek Drainage Improvement District play in meeting these challenges? As a state-created public entity, this special district provides, for the first time, recognized status for the citizens of Cypress Creek watershed, and an entity that meets criteria for seeking state and federal funding. Heretofore, we have not had a legislatively created entity focused specifically on flood mitigation for the Cypress Creek watershed. We have 134 plus mud districts, a regional water authority in the watershed, but their responsibility is to provide water and sewer and certain flood mitigation within their respective districts, not flood control throughout the entire watershed. Whatever happens upstream has a profound impact on flooding downstream. We need a coordinated, comprehensive plan. We have dedicated citizens nonprofit organizations such as Cypress Creek Flood Coalition, who have been playing important roles for years in public awareness, project evaluation, studies, planning, public education, and more. But these organizations are not legislative entities. The focus of Harris County and Harris County flood control has to be spread over all 23 county watersheds. $250 million, we're told, has been spent to date along Cypress Creek, and that is not doing nothing, but it just isn't enough. Commissioner Ramsey and Harris County Flood Control are among the first to agree that more needs to be done. They have been very welcoming, and which we greatly appreciate, towards Cypress Creek DID as partners in accomplishing our common goal, which is to reduce flooding. The creation of Cypress Creek DID as a special purpose district gives the citizens of our watershed a seat at the planning table that we simply have not had before. Our goal is to serve as the link between the Cypress Creek citizens, funding sources, and ultimately to reduce flooding in the watershed. And in order to accomplish this, we need you, the community, your input, your grassroots involvement, your influence with your elected representatives, with your MUD districts, in developing a comprehensive flood mitigation and funding plan. 500,000 plus citizens represent a pretty significant block of voters, and we need your involvement so that the Cypress Creek DID can fulfill its mission, which is to place Cypress Creek in the forefront for increased funding in the mind's eye of elected county, state, and federal legislators and officials who are the ones who determine where funding will be allocated and, more importantly, implemented. So, what is our timeline and goals? Starting in 2023, the district will solicit planning funding through private and public contributions and grants. We'll schedule public meetings and workshops throughout the watershed. And I encourage you to use this on our website, which your QR code will take you directly to that place where you can put your comments and suggestions in. In using that, we have a record of your suggestions and your questions. The goal is to develop a comprehensive plan for Cypress Creek watershed in 24-25, which would be lightning speed for the government wheels to turn, but we're starting with that goal. We'll see how far we get. And then to elect permanent directors no later than May 2027. Thank you for your presence here this evening, for your input and your interest. I'll turn it back to Calvin.
Hey, we've allocated some time here to address questions, and if you use the QR code, your phones, the questions will come right to us, or if you write them out on the little note cards, we will get them as well. So,
well, I don't know that. Anybody else need a card?
If you want to use technology, go to the QR code. If you want to use a card, pick a card too. It's 10.
Turned off at the bottom, on its code stand itself. Number 2.
I don't know, can you hear me okay?
I'm not able to do that.
Okay. How can we in the WCID 110, Harris County Flood Control, Eric Hepman, work with TxDOT to clean out the blockage under the I-45 bridge at Cypress Creek to the original design condition, dredge out about 6 feet. And I think people know it, at I-45 and Cypress Creek there's been a bottleneck there. And so I think this question really gets to how can we clean that out. So we want to address that?
At this point, we have gotten a lot of questions on the previous 2 meetings. We really are in our infancy. We just started. And so we don't, in our authority, pretty much, we weren't given any taxing authority, we don't have any bond authority, we don't have any eminent domain. We don't have any of that yet. So our focus right now is to develop a comprehensive plan, move forward with something that we can show the residents, this is where we believe this needs to move, but working with, and then we will continue to advocate for projects and continue to advocate for work. So just like the work at I-45, WCID 110, heavily involved in that activity. That's stuff that we can advocate for, but we don't have any funding right now. And as Barbara mentioned, we have, flood control has been very receptive. Harris County's been fairly receptive, especially Commissioner Ramsey's office. And so we're building the relationships right now. That's what we're working on, the relationships. TxDOT's definitely a relationship we need to build and work on. We're building a relationship with the North Harris County Regional Water Authority is definitely a relationship we want to foster. And please submit your questions on the card or through the QR code, because we want to keep track of the questions. So I'm just going to mention that I saw a hand go up. I know, but and I know you were WCID 110. So
misinterpreted the question.
Sorry?
The question was really misinterpreted. Not how you can help do it, but how can we help get officials to work together?
Correct. So we're working, and that's exactly what we're working on. We're working on building the relationships, working on building the, making those connections, so that we can facilitate conversations at this point to get work done. So we'll definitely probably get involved in that kind of activity in the future.
And one of the things that Dr. Tina Peterson told us when we met with her last is that we do have this group, because it was established by the Texas legislature, we do have some status and we do have some priority. And so because we are that kind of a body, we do have the ability to represent the citizens. And then probably more importantly, behind us is 500,000 people that live in the watershed. That's an important group of people. And so if we can kind of coalesce them as a group and be a voice for them, that's a big voice. Another question, will the slides be available? Yes, they will be up on the website. Then this question is, what % of total flood funds is Cypress Creek getting compared to other county watersheds?
I kind of need to direct you to currently the Harris County Flood Control District website. You saw the slide, $248 million, but that's a lot of that's maintenance work. There's some channel improvement work. You can go to the Flood Control District website, look at their 2018 bond program, and you can see how much money is allocated by precinct, how much by watershed. And then there are other funds that are coming into the Flood Control District's bucket of money. That's state funds, community development block grant funding, both from a disaster recovery standpoint, both from a mitigation standpoint. They're also getting they also get federal funding. And so if you ever attended, if you ever looked at a Harris County Flood Control District website, or ever participated in one of their presentations, you will get almost everything you ever want to know about how they work. And one of their favorite slides is a spaghetti slide. That's the best way, right? So in the back, I do want to recognize Alan Black. Alan Black is with Quiddity. Quiddity, previous Jones and Carter, actually developed the current Cypress Creek Comprehensive Implementation Plan. But Alan and Quiddity are part of our team as well, helping us hunt down state and federal funding. Alan used to be with the Harris County Flood Control District and has been instrumental in some of our, just up to now, how much a lot of us have learned about that world. But that spaghetti diagram, he could describe it more detail I can, because it's really a mess. But it's all the funding sources that they get where Harris County Flood Control District is coming from. Well, we are now eligible for that. If we can find matching funds, we can approach a lot of these same funding sources as well. And so, what is that total? I really invite you to go to the Harris County Flood Control District site and see what that total is.
Regina?
As far as the CDBG funds, the GLO for Cypress Creek is 120 million plus an additional 22 million for Little Cypress Creek. So the contract with GLO, the Texas General Land Office, and Flood Control is going before Commissioner's Court on Tuesday on Halloween. So once that gets going, the Cypress Creek projects will be churning. I believe the TC Jester one is 39 million from the GLO. So that one seems to be the quickest one that will get funded and get started.
So Gene is with the Texas General Land Office. And they're the ones who administer CDBG, the Community Development Block.
I want to put a small pin in that because she's not wrong, but there's a small asterisk. The Mercer Basin has already gone out for bid and is getting ready to start construction, but that is separate from the CDBG funding. So she is right, but it is not the first one going to construction. So,
Okay, you guys take it out.
no, but it's important for that,
There's
for
different
that
costs and
perspective.
different projects, and
Correct.
it's very confusing.
Well, I think Commissioner Ramsey made the point that certain projects are being done now, and there was that one slide that talked about Mercer, Westador, and TC Jester. Those are in the next couple of years. So this is not, 5 or 6 years down the road. These are projects that we should see fairly quickly. This next question is, what is the plan for correcting the errors that were made when construction was done on the Telge at Belmont Point? The water that sheeted into Coles Crossing was the largest factor in flooding those sections. Seems like errors were made that caused harm to taxpaying citizens and still pose a potential threat. My understanding is there's no current plan to address this, nor any intention to address this. Please explain.
Okay, that's a Coles Crossing resident. So Belmont is one of our streets on our eastern edge next to Telge. So that's what the question's about. The question's about the drains. Belmont doesn't drain very well. And I don't think there's anybody out here that can answer that question as to what's going on with Belmont at this point. The only thing we can say, I think, with some assurance that is relatively correct, is that out of the 2018 bond program, there were subdivision projects that were supposed to move forward to alleviate internal drainage issues within subdivisions. Most of those, and the Flood Control District did start most, if not all of them, in some way, shape, or form. But they also, at a recent meeting, they cut out a lot of those projects. And Coles Crossing did have one. They did have one of those projects. But so did a lot of other subdivisions. And that project inside Coles, if not completely killed, was at least put on hold. So I'm not aware of any projects currently going on within this particular subdivision. Is that correct? Anybody want to? That's correct, right?
Yes, that is essentially.
I'll wait for Eric to correct me in one way.
So yes, court back in February of this year elected to put a large variety of projects, mainly in Precinct 3, on hold and defund them beyond the further study phase.
Correct. So those aren't
so Coles Crossing was in that pot. However, I know there's been a discussion about Telge and the entrance, and I want to put that back in a little bit of perspective of if you fix a lot of the flooding issues along Cypress Creek, that water doesn't end up going in some of those directions. So,
but in this particular case, it'd be Little Cypress. So
yes, I'm sorry. Yes, we start looking at some of those detention ponds, for example. Sorry, I'm probably talking way too long on this. That there's going to be a separate project along Little Cypress Creek along the trace within the old golf course. Whether or not you like it, dislike it, I apologize, but there's going to be an expansion of that. So when you add all of that regional detention over there, you start to pull that water over there to mitigate other projects. So I know there was a lot of discussion about are we looking at this holistically, and I can tell you with some relative certainty that we have looked at the combination of how Little Cypress affects Cypress Creek. I remember at one point, Earl, when he was looking at, living at flood control, I suppose to say, working at flood control, telling me how there was going to be almost a 9-foot drop in water surface elevation at the confluence of Little Cypress Creek. It's 6. Sorry. I've heard it's not, I've heard 6, I've heard 4, but there's going to be a significant drop. If you can imagine even a 4-foot drop, that's a lot of a water elevation difference.
So having said all that'd be great news. But you also saw up there the billions of dollars it would take to get to this point. And so there really is, the reason why we were created for the most part was so that we could get those funding sources and bring more money to just Cypress Creek, because flood control in the county has to focus on 22 other watersheds. So if we're successful at that, hopefully we can bring enough money here to see those results a whole lot faster than what they would be if you waited on $100 million, every few years to solve a $2 billion problem. And so that's what Larry is looking at, trying to come up with this comprehensive analysis that, if this was a plan, how would then we proceed through it, and then start systematically seeking out funding to do for those solutions. So, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Next question, is there any channelization planned in mid-Cypress Creek?
I'm gonna try not to go talking, but again, that's the comprehensive plan. We haven't done the comprehensive. Larry, you want to talk about mid-reach?
I'm not aware of any channelization for Cypress Creek itself. In any of these plans, the Cypress Creek, the main channel of Cypress Creek is really trying to be controlled through regional detention ponds that I'm aware of. But I think it's at least worthwhile looking into whether channelization is a viable alternative or concept to be considered for Middle Cypress. And when we talk about channelization, we're talking about there's a lot of different variations of it. Basic channelization means you're basically going to make that channel bigger. You can make it, bigger by making it wider, deeper, both, partly wider, partly deeper. You can do all sorts of things. The last slide I had, the Middle Cypress Creek channelization was one thing at least we were going to look at and see how viable that may be. There's environmental permitting issues with going into a channel like Cypress Creek, and, for example, deepening it or widening the bottom of it. But there's other concepts where you can widen the upper part of it and avoid certain environmental permitting requirements and still achieve some benefits.
Okay. You're going to submit it online, Bill?
No, and just a comment on that. In the Cypress Creek maintenance project, the fifth phase of that has some channelization work done below 249, below 45, and below 30.
So it's not being couched as channelization. It's being presented as sedimentation removal. So it's not really technically a channel improvement project, it's a sedimentation removal project. There are two sections that they are proposing to actually enlarge the channel at Kirkendall and 45. And so those are channelizations, but the rest of the 22 miles of Cypress Creek is a sedimentation removal contract through FEMA. FEMA gave flood control $247 million to go do sedimentation removal on a dozen different channels in Harris County due to this is post-Harvey flooding impact. So this is basically probably a hazard mitigation grant.
Okay. Here's some several questions that are related to the district, and I want to direct these to Andy. And the one is, who is electing the permanent board of directors and ratifying improvement district?
the election to elect permanent directors, confirm the district, and do anything else that would be permitted by the statute will be done by registered voters within the watershed. And we're in the process of defining the watershed and doing a few other things to get ready for that event when it's time to have an election.
A related question, Andy. How will each municipality provide consent so the election can proceed?
There's only one municipality in which any part of the district is located, and that's the city of Houston. We're preparing a city consent application, which includes boundaries and quite a bit of other information. That is anticipated to be submitted before the end of the year. And the city limits and extraterritorial jurisdiction of the other two cities, which are located nearby or that are in the watershed, were excluded from the boundaries of this district because of the complications of getting multiple city consents. And those cities are Prairie View and Waller. They're both excluded.
What is the nominating process for the election of permanent board members?
It will be the same as for your water district or your city council. A couple of months before the election, there will be a period where anyone who is interested in running for office can sign up to be on that board, or to be on the ballot, let's put it that way.
When do you anticipate going to the state legislature for taxing authority and eminent domain?
Good question. We have 2 sessions of the legislature before this thing turns into a pumpkin. And right now we are reviewing the prior studies and kind of the body of information that is available at this time to make some ultimate some decisions about potential projects. So the next phase, which we will embark on shortly, is to evaluate the potential projects for benefits and costs. And then once we have that information, then we will prepare a final report and have a master drainage plan. We hope to have that done by the end of '24 and be able to go back to the legislature to present this plan and the body of work that we've done to the legislature and ask the legislature for the powers to execute the plan, which will also give us the power to have some matching funds for the state and federal funding that we believe is available for these projects.
You missed the question. He asked, would that give the district taxing authority? That was the question.
Well, it's very clear that without some way to raise money, you can't have matching funds. So I suspect that some taxing authority could be granted by the legislature, and that's the only place that it can come from. And then, if that happens, we would be obligated to have an election that would ask the voters to delegate whatever authority would be needed to execute the plan that's in front of us, or whenever that happens.
Is the improvement district planning changes to Cypress Creek watershed outside the boundaries of just the water control?
No. No, I think the question is, are you planning to work outside the boundaries of the watershed? And since our boundaries are
think we worked through most of your questions, and we said we'd try to finish up by about 7:30. If somebody else wants to have more conversation, we're certainly available for that. But I'd like to make some closing remarks. We mentioned our website. This is a QR code to get to the website. And then there's an email address where you can also contact us. But I wanted to stress 2 or 3 other things about, what are we looking to do here? And I think, Joe and others have kind of tried to give you some detail about that. But what we really want to do is mobilize all of you and all of the rest of us to be a voice for Cypress Creek. And it's in two ways. One, to get Cypress Creek priority in the funding side. We got to go get money. And as you've looked at this, this money has got to come from the federal government and from the state government and from Harris County and others. But it's not something that Harris County can just put all of the money together. These big bond elections, even if you added up the numbers that we had on the slides just for Cypress Creek, now this stretches out over a long period of time, they were like $5 billion. There was 1 and 1 and 3.6 if you built a tunnel. Well, you're not going to pull that all out of just bond elections for Harris County. So we're going to have to convince our federal legislators and our state legislators that they need to fund these projects along Cypress Creek. And so if we can get everybody together as a group and be that voice of the voters, that's what we think we can do to help, to get the money to come to make some difference on Cypress Creek. And I think there was one question that was buried in there, is that, how can we prevent, another Harvey from occurring? The answer is you probably can't do that. You pick your number. That's a 1,000-year event or something, and to totally protect everything from flooding in Harvey is not possible. But we think that you can make a difference, and this is a long-term project. And as Commissioner said, what's happening now is a start. It's not the end; it's a start. So I want to encourage you to reach out to your friends and neighbors and the other organizations you're in. And as we start to schedule these workshops, participate in them, and we'll get all our ideas on the table, and we'll get Larry to help us sort those all out and figure out how do we get to a comprehensive plan that looks at everything. Again,
on our website, many of the resources that Mark referred to are on the Cypress Creek DID website. Larry Lipton, thank you, Larry, has been video taping these sessions. So if some of your friends missed it and would like to see it, we'll have that video up within a day or two, and the slides. So please visit that website.
again, thank all of you for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you.